of the revenue that a government collects is spent on legacy liabilities, on discharging the burden of the past, debt incurred in the past, workers whose services were rendered in the past but now are entitled to pensions and benefits post-retirement. How much of your revenues you spend on those legacy liabilities? Obviously, revenue is a zero-sum game in this sense. The more you spend on debt service and servicing pensions, the less you have to invest in this generation's education, its health, the roads and bridges for economic activity to occur now. So there's always a tension in every government budget between servicing the past and investing in the future. When you look at the sustainability of that debt service burden, the servicing of legacy liabilities, let's go to the states and take a look at other governmental units similar to the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, in the same jurisdiction as Puerto Rico, under the same constitutional framework as Puerto Rico. What you see, if you calculate debt service to revenues, government revenues, that's on the left side, or net tax supported debt, NTSD, as per capita. What is the burden of the government's tax supported debt on a per capita basis? Looking at net tax supported debt as a percentage of personal income. How much of the personal income of the people in that state is being dedicated by the government to debt service? And then net tax supported debt as a percentage of the GDP, of the total economic activity in that jurisdiction. So you can see the highest 5 states on these 4 metrics. Hawaii dedicates 13% of its revenues to debt service. Hawaii spends $5,000 per person on debt service. Hawaii spends 11% of the total personal income in the state of Hawaii on debt service. As a percentage of GDP, debt service is 9% of Hawaii's total economic activity. If you look at the stats for Puerto Rico today, they're not even on the same chart, just off the human scale. Puerto Rico, 36% of its revenues are dedicated to debt service. $14,000 per person is the total debt. The 77% of personal income is spent on debt service. And as a percentage of the GDP, debt service is 47%. This is just a massive burden. And so again, going back to thinking about, is that a sustainable burden? Puerto Rico is spending that much more on debt service than its peer states, right? Like multiples of what other states are paying. So other states have the much greater financial flexibility to invest in education, health, infrastructure, the things that drive private economic activity, the things that support private economic activity. So the more what the economists would say is that at some point, the debt service burden becomes so great that it's a deterrent to economic activity. It actually retards economic activity, and you can see the people of Puerto Rico voting with their feet. There's a reason why people are leaving the island, and this, again, creates an adverse feedback loop. The fewer people you have, the fewer taxpayers you have, the less government revenue you have, the less economic activity you have. But the economy is so stagnant that it's driving people off island to go to Florida and Chicago and Philadelphia and New York to seek better economic opportunity. So in our minds, this isn't even a close call as to whether the existing debt stock and debt service burden is sustainable. It's not sustainable. And one of the things that the Oversight Board needs to come up with, a combination of fiscal measures and debt restructuring measures, is a sustainable debt burden. That the debt burden on Puerto Rico at the end of the debt restructuring process, the statute says must be sustainable. In thinking about sustainability, they're no doubt going to look at these kinds of metrics. So the restructuring proposals we've produced so far that nobody has accepted, none of the creditors have been willing to go along with, are at the bottom. This is the pro forma. So we have the debt service to revenue burden that we have proposed is at 15%, higher than Hawaii, but in the same zip code as Hawaii and the rest of the states. That brings tax-supported debt down by 40% to $9,000 a head. It brings it, still high as a percentage of personal income, and still high as a percent of total GDP. But on a current run rate basis, which is the far left column, looking at it more as what does it cost to service the debt as a percentage of revenue, we've brought it into the same zip code as the other states.